channel. I'm really excited to show you what we're painting today, but first I want to take some time to thank each and every one of you for all your warm well wishes regarding my grandbaby Zach, who was born premature. We really appreciate it. You guys sent a lot of love and comments and messages, so very, very appreciative. So thank you so much. I want to give you guys an update. He's doing really well. He was discharged out of the hospital after almost 3 weeks. So again, thank you guys, and now we can get into this painting today. So this is what we're working on. So before we get right into it, I want to show you guys the size canvas we're using. So it's a 9 by 12 stretched canvas. So these ones, they make a sound kind of like a drum. So there's nothing protecting the back. They're wrapped around a wooden frame and stapled to it. I personally like these ones the best. I've painted on so many different surfaces. I used to paint on rocks. I've painted on driftwood, particle board even, and the flat panel ones. But these ones I like the best, and here's the reason why. This right here, you have about ½ an inch or so. You don't need to get it framed. You can just paint the sides even, whatever color you want, or continue your painting on the edges all the way around, and you can just hang it directly on the wall. So you don't even need to really put a hook in there. You can if you want, but I find they just hang quite easily just like this. So that's why I like them the best. And I usually paint larger, but I haven't had a chance to get to the art store, and I've run out of larger pieces of canvas. So I've got a bunch of these from all my art classes I was teaching back home in Golden. I've got boxes and boxes of these. So we're going to do a small painting today, and it'll be a little bit quicker than my other tutorials. And the next thing I want to go through is I've never shown you guys my favorite go-to brushes. So I've got 5 here. I narrowed it down because I've got quite a few brushes that I like to use, but these are the ones you guys probably notice me using in most of my videos. So first of all, we've got the fan brush. And it's not a really big fan brush. I find that I've got better control, and it's a little bit neat and tidier with this medium size one. You want to make sure when you're picking brushes that they're for acrylic or oil and acrylic. They'll be a nice firmness, not too soft like watercolor. Just pay really close attention when you're in the art store and you're picking that out. Make sure you stay away from watercolor ones. Unless for some weird reason you find watercolor brushes easy to use. I find this is the best because they're, like I said, a little bit sturdier, so you can you know, stipple with them. You want to be able to do that stipple, but with watercolor brushes they're way too soft, and they won't work as well. So that was brush number 1. Brush number 2 is a Filbert. So a Filbert is flat, straight edges, and then round on the edge like a half circle. Okay, so these brushes are wonderful. You can use them, they're so versatile. You can use them for so many things. I use them for clouds, I use them for waterfalls sometimes, as well as foliage. This is my largest Filbert brush I have, so I would use this for really big clouds or the biggest bushes or trees. So it's really great for foliage, even water, clouds, and I got these ones. This is probably one of the most expensive brushes I have. It depends what brushes I'm buying. Sometimes you can get away with $3 brushes, and sometimes you want to splurge a little bit. So this one is Galleria by Winsor & Newton, and it is very used, and it's still like brand new. I've had this brush for probably 6 years. Now, I also work with resin and glitter and make Christmas ornaments and all kinds of stuff, and you can see this has taken me through a lot of different paintings and art projects. There's glitter and resin all over it. But yeah, so it's well worth the money if you're gonna splurge on a paintbrush. Of course, remember, don't ever leave acrylic in your brush. When you're not using your brush and there's paint in it, put it in the water. You spent money on a brush. You don't want to have to throw them out. Okay, so that one is my more expensive one. This one's kind of just in the middle. And then this one here, my flat brush. I've had this one for a long time too, and it still has its nice shape. So, and my students also really like it. So this one is really good for making those straight edges, right? If you want something really straight, like a building, or lines in the water, or a path, this is very, very handy to have. So I highly recommend getting one of these. The next brush is a liner brush. Now most people really find these the most difficult brushes to use when learning to paint. That is true. Out of all the years I've been teaching, every student will say the same thing. Oh no, not this brush again. But it's a must-have because you're going to be needing to do fine little lines and wisps, especially if you're a landscape artist like myself and you want to be able to paint grass and twigs and tree branches. So it's really important to have a liner brush. Now the longer the liner brush, the more difficult it is to get used to, but you just have to, like anything else in life, you just have to practice over and over. You have to be able to get the paint to flow nicely out of the brush, and because there's hardly any hairs in a liner brush, because they're so small, it can be aggravating for people because you constantly need to go back and reload that brush. But what people make the mistake of doing is just going for more paint. Well, all that does is put all that paint in one spot and it will not flow, so that's why you need the water. Okay, my last brush that is a must. This fun brush, everybody loves this one. It's the mop brush. Now this one, I don't even know the brand of this. I don't think it's the most expensive, and it's probably just kind of in the middle. So the mop brush kind of looks like a makeup brush. In fact, that's another thing. I've heard a lot of other artists out there, they swear by makeup brushes for painting. They swear that they're better. I've personally never tried that, but I've had this one. I got it in a set, and I've had it for a really long time, probably 5 years. And that's a long time for acrylic brushes to last. So you've got to really take care of them. Now the biggest tip with these, don't get them wet first. These ones are different than other brushes. You want them completely dry. You're using them to tap and make sort of a texture or a print with them. So you would just tap them, just the bottom, into the paint when you load it up. And I use these for bushes. So you can hear that? So that's the sound that you want to hear. You're not going to be using the sides of them. So they're really great. You just get a nice soft, sometimes like almost an airbrush look. It depends on how much paint you have on the brush. Sometimes if I'm scumbling or dry brushing, that means there's hardly any paint left on the brush. I'll just dust small little circles, and it works well with blending clouds or nebulas in the sky, or just any kind of background. Or they can take you quite far in your painting. So there you go. Those are the must-haves for brushes. Thanks for subscribing, and if you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe right now and the bell so you can get notified each time I post a new video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started, guys. I begin with Dioxazine Purple, Phthalo Blue, and Turquoise. Here we're working on a 9x12 stretched double primed canvas, starting with a blending brush, a little bit of water, Dioxazine Purple. Load both sides nicely. I'm going to begin pulling lines down from the top of the canvas. Turning your brush to make wide strokes and then turning it the other way to make skinny ones. Now when I go back for more paint, I'm not grabbing any water. I'm just going to use straight paint for the rest, so it's a little bit darker each time. And then I'm slightly tapping a little bit right there and pulling. Okay, with a clean brush and just a little bit of water, I'm going to pull into the phthalo blue. Loading both sides again. You're going to begin to pull the blue and mix it into the purple slightly and cover part of the white canvas. Then I'm just going to lightly tap some of that blue along the bottom of the canvas as well. And I'm going to leave some areas white so that we can bring in turquoise. So softly blending it around, getting the edges of the canvas too, and a little bit on the top. Now taking a clean number 7 round brush, we're going to fill in the white spots and go over part of the blue with turquoise. I have a little bit of water on my brush for this, and I'm rolling and twisting my brush around in that turquoise to get it loaded evenly. So let's begin right there in the middle of the white, pulling and flicking and spreading that paint around. Now we're painting wet on wet, so it is natural that you're going to pull some of that blue and some of that purple into it, and that's okay. You want to mix those colors up a little bit here and there. Let's take some titanium white and start pulling inside some of that turquoise to lighten it up even more. Now again, I'm letting it naturally pick up a little bit of the phthalo blue and purple here and there. Clean your brush off and twist your brush around in the phthalo blue and a little bit of the purple. And let's begin pulling little wiggly lines and little tiny flicks for the suggestion of some hanging moss or vines with leaves. So it starts to look like there's some foliage back there. I don't have a lot of paint on my brush for this, and I'm just using my brush very softly. So I'm going to continue to do this around both sides and in the middle, and I keep reapplying with purple and blue and no water. I want it to be the darkest on the edge, so I'm using a bit more purple here, and all the way up to the top, and just a little bit on the bottom. I continue to do this a little bit more. We want a nice balance of light and shadow. And I used more phthalo blue rather than the purple that time. Now I'm taking more purple, and I'm going to place a thicker line right there and one there as well. A little bit more along the edge. Now washing your brush off well, you're going to pick up some turquoise, and you're going to begin painting a few little blobs that will give the suggestion that they're little mushrooms. And I say blobs because that's all they really are. You don't have to try too hard. Just go up and back down, kind of a half circle, but it can be a little bit misshapen, a little bigger on one side than the other, and then add a skinny stem. Now a few of these get painted over later on as the painting progresses. And then I'm going to take some white and a little bit of turquoise on the tip of my brush and start dabbing in little fireflies, little stars, and maybe tiny little mushrooms. Then taking an old toothbrush, dipping it in water and white, I'm going to turn it over and flick, flick, flick all around to make it look like a bunch of stars. And then put it in the water and take a mini fan brush. Get it wet so that those bristles kind of spread apart, and then very lightly just dust over some of those stars that we sprayed on to give the suggestion or the illusion that there are lots of shooting or falling stars. And then using the corner of my brush, I'm going to make a few little thicker ones. So I tap little bits of white using the corner, and then I flick lightly. Now I'm switching to a medium-sized filbert. It's dry, and I'm just going to soften ever so lightly around those stars to make them look softer and hazier. And then tap again with some white, and then soften again. And a liner brush. Because I want a smaller dot in the middle, I need to use a smaller brush. So I'm tapping straight up and down, dabbing pure white, straight white paint with no water this time. And then pulling and flicking a really skinny line from each one of those. So I'm just going to continue to do this until I've got as many as I want. You can do as much as you want or as few as you like. So here's where I decided I didn't like that mushroom and I wanted to cover it up. Sorry about that, guys. I just took purple and painted right over it and then added a little bit of it around the stars at the top of the sky. Okay, so now I'm going to take my smallest Filbert brush, no water, and straight turquoise right on the very tip, and I'm just tapping really lightly in here, putting some little ferns back there maybe. I'm just putting little bits of leaves and vines and all sorts of foliage in the foreground. Now I'm going to start bringing in some really pretty orbs or glowing stars by taking my small filbert again and a little bit of turquoise and white. Not too much paint on your brush for this. So I just do soft little circles and then bright white right in the center. I'm just going to add a few more, a group of them maybe down here on the left side. Same thing, light turquoise and white. And when I finish that, I'm going to go to my liner brush, get it wet, roll it in the white and the turquoise, and work on flicking a line or a streak down from these falling stars again, or shooting stars. So a light flick, don't push hard. If you're having trouble and the paint's not flowing, remember to go back and grab more water rather than paint. Don't forget to dab the center of each star. And don't worry too much about making perfectly straight lines. They don't have to be. And now I'm going to take Mars Black on my round brush again. It's a number 7 and no water at all. I'm going to come in with a tree and just do loops for the branches. And just wiggle and pull with my brush. Go back and reload when you need to. We want this to be very, very striking. I rarely use black in my paintings anymore, but in certain cases you just need to. In this one I really wanted to have a nice silhouette and shadow going on, so I thought black would work best. And right here I'm just pulling and dragging little bits of moss or vines that might be hanging down. Now I eventually come in with some light phthalo green or yellow phthalo green and phthalo blue, and I pull in some leaves and just highlight and bring in some more color on this tree. Okay, I'm happy with how that looks. Now I'm going to wash that brush, switch to my liner again, roll it around in some white, and continue adding some more stars. And maybe highlight a little bit of those mushrooms down there in the bottom left. So dab for a little star and then flick softly. And I begin coming in with a few little highlights here, again using turquoise and titanium. Now taking my favorite flat brush, loading both sides equally with a phthalo blue, I'm going to start adding some shadow down on the bottom. Just little wiggling and squiggles, slightly scumbling around down there, not too much paint on my brush. Washing that brush off, you're going to take neon yellow and a little bit of titanium white just to soften that. And I'm going to start dabbing the brightest highlights around here and the stars and little bits on the mushroom. And on some of the foliage right here in the foreground. And I'm going to do a soft little halo around some of them so they look more like stars. It just looks so pretty when you do that soft haze around each of them. And load my brush up some more. This time I want to take a little bit of turquoise with it. And maybe a few little rays. I wasn't too sure about these at first, but then I just decided to leave them. I thought it added a little bit more whimsy and made it look a little bit more magical. Okay, adding a few more stars. Using neon yellow, white, a little bit of turquoise. You can use all three of those colors for your highlights. And I just want to add a little bit more detail on some mushrooms, not too much. I'll do a few more down here as well. Now with a clean brush, it's a flat brush again, I'm using neon pink with a little bit of titanium white, and I'm going to scumble lightly and glaze over part of the purple, part of the yellow, and when that happens I get a little bit of orange or like a bright tangerine color, which is really pretty. And this will only work if you don't have water on your brush. And then I add a little bit more titanium white where I want it to be even brighter. And then soft little flicks up and down. Now grabbing the last little bit of the neon yellow I've got left in that bottle and a fan brush. I'm going to tap lightly and glaze over part of these mushrooms and the leaves in the foreground, and then a little bit in the sky. Okay, now I'm going to begin painting these lanterns that are hanging from the tree branches. Just using a round brush, number 7 again, and black paint, no water. Just doing a line on the top that's slightly longer and curved, and then a smaller one, a shorter one I should say, on the bottom of each lantern. So I'm not going to do too many of them. And with a clean brush, any kind of small brush that you have, use white, pink, and yellow for the light in the center. And then here I come in with some turquoise, phthalo blue, and yellow, and my Filbert brush, and I'm tapping in a highlight on those trees, which I think looks really pretty. I wasn't going to do this originally. I was just going to have the black tree in silhouette, but I love color, so I decided to do this, and I'm glad I did. I think it looks much prettier. So wherever you like, just don't overdo it. You want to have some black showing so you have that nice contrast and light and shadow.
And then I sort of make it look like it's swirling. Maybe the moss or vines are growing around those tree trunks in the back. And then adding a little bit here and there along the left side as well, the inside of the tree trunk. Now where I want my highlights to be even brighter, I'll add a little bit of white to that color. But now I'm going back to Dioxazine Purple and white, and I'm going to just do little tiny dabs, pushing lightly with my brush for flower petals. So if I push harder, it'll make the petals larger, making my flowers bigger so they look like they're closer to us in the foreground. And then if I hardly touch it all and just do light little dabs here and there, then they'll be smaller. You can use a liner brush for this if you feel more comfortable. Now I'm just pulling in some more contrast using purple and just wiggling up maybe some little vines, some branches. Just use your imagination. You can make whatever you want. And I'm going to define this vine a little bit more with yellow and white. Remember, I always say this in my videos, but acrylic paint dries darker. So I'm a little bit more generous with my white when I'm applying my highlights because I know it's going to be a bit darker once it dries. So that's just something to keep in mind, guys. And I'm just going to soften and add a little bit of shadow on the other side of those tree trunks using phthalo blue and yellow, and I've also got some light phthalo green. Look for all the colors and brushes I'm using in the description box below as well, guys. I'll have everything listed there. Just add a little bit more of a highlight. And it's yellow and white for this. Now taking with a clean brush, neon pink, I'm just going to dab. That one was still wet inside, so it smudged it a little bit, but that's okay. I'm just adding some more color to the light inside the lanterns. So using neon pink again, and then dabbing little bits of it in the foreground and up in the sky. Now taking a liner brush with more black paint, I'm going to just define these lanterns a little bit more, adding a little bit of detail on the bottom, a little curl right there, and then some bigger ones on the top. This just adds a little bit more whimsy and character to the painting. And we'll finish up with that one. And then go ahead and add a bit more of a highlight on the foliage growing in and around those lanterns using yellow and white again. Now I think I want to add one more lantern right there and then re-highlight each of the other ones. So that is using yellow, neon pink, and white. And then again, while I have that in my brush, I'm going to dab a little bit on the foliage and up on the stars in the sky. Now back to the black paint and a clean brush. Let's go ahead and add those little curls on the top and the bottom. think it's time to start adding some more flowers into the foreground. I'm using my liner brush, a short one this time, and phthalo blue for the shadow and those petals. And then I'm going to take some Dioxazine Purple and a little bit of white as well. And then little dabs and dots inside each of the flowers. You can use white for some, and you can use phthalo blue or purple for at the center of the flowers. Whatever you like. I like to do a little bit of both myself. So I'm just going to do a few more details on these flowers, and then I'm going to go back to the tree and add a little bit more ivy or moss, whatever it is that you want to have hanging from it. So let's take some more of that light green, yellow and white, and just add some more highlights on this tree. So add them wherever you like, a little bit in the sky, some on the bottom, and then you can highlight your flowers as well. Now that they've had time to dry a little bit, you can have a look at them and see where you need to add a little bit more depth or shadow or highlight. So here I'm just adding a little bit more hot pink. Using a clean round brush, I'm taking turquoise and I'm going to add more to the background. So carefully around all of those stars, you can go over the outside of them slightly, but if you accidentally go over the center, remember to dab a little bit more white in there again. And then I take a little bit of phthalo blue, like just a really small amount, and then I go over part of the turquoise and the purple with that. I found that it was just a little bit too bright, and I needed those highlights to pop out a little bit more and not be in competition with all the light in the background. And then just a little bit of phthalo blue on the bottom. Now if you're not getting that soft blended look, then use less paint and a little bit of water. You'll know when you've got too much because won't blend in very well. It'll just kind of have that see-through or drippy look, and you don't want that. So you'll have to just practice, and with time you'll get a good feel for how much water or how little you need. And I'm just adding a few little bits of that light green in and around the flowers, the grass, the mushrooms in the foreground, and even a little bit up in the tree. Not too much. We don't want to overdo it with our highlights, otherwise we lose all that nice shadow that we have. And here for the lanterns, I'm not using the green, I'm using neon yellow and white. No water. And let's add a little bit more highlight right up there. And then I'm just going to go over with a little layer of phthalo blue. And again, I know this is going to dry darker, so it'll be interesting to come back later and see what it looks like once it's dry. I will add a picture at the end of this video so you guys can see the difference. And I want to thank you guys again for joining me in my studio today. If you liked this one, give it a thumbs up and comment below. Let me know what you'd like to see next, and also what your favorite brushes are to use. Bye for now, you guys. See you next time.